Today we're going to convert and paint some Gundabad Ogres. Hi all and welcome to the cabin. Games Workshop just released a new edition of MESBG, so naturally I wanted to return to last year's army project, Azog's Legion. If you haven't seen the previous videos in this series, there's a link to the playlist on screen right now. Last time I had finished painting Azog, 36 Gundabad Orcs, and 3 Orc captains. Since then, I've gone back to repaint a tiny detail on some of the Orcs. Thanks to a comment from Smoothbrush4722, I realized that the part underneath the thigh armor is supposed to be leather. The official paint jobs from GW also got this wrong, but my reference pictures confirm that Smoothbrush4722 is correct. With the hype surrounding the new edition, it feels like a great time to paint some more Gundabad models. I'll talk more about how the new edition will affect this army later in the video. Another source of inspiration was the trip that Kalle and I took to Oxford earlier this year, where we got to see the house where Professor Tolkien lived for 17 years, as well as the pub where he met with the Inklings. We also paid our respects at the grave of him and his wife. When we interviewed Alessio Cavatore in Nottingham, he expressed that Tolkien's writing is the closest thing to a religion he has experienced. I can relate to that, and it was beautiful to see how so many fans had come to leave small tokens of appreciation at the grave. Alright, let's start by taking a look at the Gundabad Ogres using my reference photos from the films and Hobbit Chronicles books. There are 3 distinct ogre designs. One can be seen leading the catapult trolls, another attacking Bard's children, and the last attacking Alfred. Weta also created variations on the colors and textures of these designs for the shots where multiple ogres are attacking the dwarf chariots. Each box features 2 different sculpts cast in resin, so we have accurate representations of 2 of the 3 designs from the film. Having removed the casting gates and mold lines, I put the parts in an ultrasonic cleaner with some washing up liquid and also scrubbed them manually to really make sure all the mold release agent was removed. Then I used super glue to put all the parts together. I decided to keep 2 ogres completely standard and then convert the other 2 for some added variety and flavor. Since the 3rd ogre design isn't produced by Games Workshop, I wanted to try and create this look myself. One of the standout features is the left arm, which is much smaller than normal, so I pinned another arm onto the ogre body for this. The donor was Bolg, since I've actually got 2 of him. I planned to do a conversion of him as well, so I had a spare arm I could use. For the last ogre, I wanted to represent the scene where Bard's children are threatened and the ogre is raising his club with both hands. I was confident that this was possible since I've seen it done on the Painting Middle-earth blog, link in the description below. So I repositioned the arms and cut up the club, pinning all parts together to ensure a strong bond. Next, I used green stuff in several stages to resculpt the shoulder areas and hide the arm adjustments. I also sculpted new details onto the face of the 3rd ogre so that it matches better with the on-screen look. Is it me, or does he kinda look like Shrek now at the green stage? Hey, I'm an ogre! I also used green stuff to fill in the regular gaps between the various parts. I started off the painting with an undercoat of Xandri dust, and I also used my airbrush to fill in any parts the spray can missed. Continuing with the airbrush, I applied a zenithal highlight of Rakarth flesh all over the skin. If you don't own an airbrush, you could always do a careful dry brush instead. I then used pallid witch flesh more selectively as a final highlight. The ogres have a few different skin tones in the film, so I decided to provide a subtle difference to the skin of each of my miniatures using contrast paints that you can see on screen now. I diluted them heavily with contrast medium to create weak washes that slightly tint the skin and add some definition to the recesses. You probably won't notice much of a difference between them on the tabletop, but I like that each one has a distinctive coloration if you look closely. For the spots on the backs and shoulders, I used Rattling Grime diluted with 50% contrast medium. Once dry, I went back to do a second layer, but this time I was more selective and focused on the deeper recesses. The clubs were base coated with Catachan flesh, and I used Leadbelcher on the spikes. After that, I shaded everything with Agrax Earthshade. To highlight the wood, I used Blood Reaver flesh, followed by Night Quester flesh. For the spikes, I used Runefang steel. In the film, the loincloths are not all the same color, so I base coated half of them with Doombull brown. Next, I shaded these with Berserker Bloodshade and added highlights of Tuskor fur, and finally Deathclaw brown. Continuing with the remaining loincloths, I chose XV88 as a base coat, with a wash of Seraphim Sepia and highlights of Baylor brown, and lastly Zamisi Desert. At this stage, I only had the small details left. I painted the tongues with Screamer Pink, followed by a wash of Caribur Crimson, and a highlight of Pink Horror. I then cleaned up the teeth with Ushapti Bone. To make them look nasty, I applied a coat of Agaros Dunes. I also used this color on all the nails. To add some shadow to the area surrounding the eyes, I used Rattling Grime again. I painted the eyes with Wraithbone, and while I wasn't able to film the process, here you can still see what they looked like at this stage. To finish them off, I applied a dot of Rhinox hide in the middle. Finally, I applied a 50-50 mix of matte and satin varnish through my airbrush. And with that, my Gundabad Ogres were complete. I used the same basing techniques that I've shown previously in this series. It can be scary to do more advanced conversions, but I think they turned out okay once there was a bit of paint on them. It's really nice to see them lined up and ready for battle, and I also think they fit in well with my previous models for Azog's Legion. Or should I say Army of Gundabad, as this force is now known. The army composition and options have remained largely the same for the new edition, but sadly there are two builds in my force that are not legal anymore. Azog can't ride his White Warg, as for some reason that's only available to him in Azog's Hunters and the Pits of Dol Guldur lists. And Gundabad Orcs can't carry spears and shields at the same time anymore. It's a bit of a shame since I spent quite some time and effort on these conversions. But I guess in friendly games I could probably still run Azog mounted and proxy the models to be without shields. There have also been some small changes in points costs, which takes the entire army to a grand total of 1,057 points. I'm looking forward to playing the new edition with this army and also to adding more units to it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. A special thank you to Arnold over on Patreon. And if you want to support us, all the links are in the description down below. We'll see you next time. Good luck with your miniatures.